Hello and welcome to this exploring session looking at the interlude of John the Evangelist, a play which we have technically already looked at on the podcast, on the Beyond Shakespeare podcast that you can listen to on whatever podcasting platform you like, in a session that we recorded a good couple of years ago, I think now. But it is time to come back and have another look at this this odd text. I think I might be leading the witnesses a little bit. I don't like to normally lead the witnesses with knowledge, but there are some odd quirks about this particular text, especially as what we think it is and what we think its audience was and why it came into being, and also why it ended up being what it is now. I have a dating range for this from anywhere from the 1520s all the way up to the 1550s when it was printed, which makes it quite difficult to place it within a context of what this play was trying to do and what its audience was for at the time. There may be more up-to-date scholarship on the dating, but as far as I know, it's possibly more likely to be early than late. But to look through this relatively short text, we have this wonderful room of people. And so reading John the Evangelist today is...
Hello, I'm Lois, a retired academic living in London.
And reading Eugenio today is...
Hi, I'm David. I'm a researcher and writer on British art, also living in London.
And reading Actio today is...
Hi, I'm Rachael, an actor from New Jersey.
Reading Irisdision, again, all of these pronunciation to be debated, is...
Liza Graham, actor, singer, and Renaissance text coach, 2 actors in London.
Reading Idleness today, but hopefully not idle, and in his performance will be...
I'm Eric, and yeah, this is a rare treat. We rarely get to have Lois in the evening session.
Yes, it's a lovely mix of people. Many people who actually a good percentage of this room have also did the afternoon session today. So hopefully we're all going to be wide awake, and we've all had enough coffee to keep going. And reading Evil Counsel. Spoilers. There's some Evil Counsel coming along. Is...
Hi, I'm Greg, and unfortunately I wasn't in this afternoon session. I was doing something called work.
It'll never catch on. And that is the room. I'm your host, Robert Crighton, and I will be, as I say, trying not to lead the witnesses too much because I have been here before. But I have thoughts. I have thoughts already on this interesting text. We're going to stop and start a fair amount. This is not very long. So we have got time to do that. So we're going to just do the first appearance of John the Evangelist. There is a speech here where enter John the Evangelist, and so let's hear from John.
Right. Domine, ante te omne desiderium meum, et a te gemitus meus non es absconditus. The sweetest life, sovereign, in this world, with some, is to have meditation of our Lord Jesus. Very contemplative, God worshipped thus, bethinking in the soul without any speech. God tendeth right more the prayer with the heart of us than the prayer of the mouth. The text doth teach, in meditation, whoso hath forfence, the mouth cannot express the thoughts of the heart. That holiest fruition is of so high intelligence as it ravisheth the soul into a blessed desert. It feeleth no earthly thing unto the time it revert. Thus fared Magdalene, when Martha complained, she heard her not, in God her heart was so expert. Nor the angel at the sepulchre, love so her constrained. The cause why I rehearse you the holy meditation, for it is mine exercise express. Whoso will labor in this must see his habitation be solitary in soul of great quietness. Therefore ever to the church I do me dress, rest, reverence, and worship therein should be, with crying on Christ and our sins confess. Beate qui habitant in domo tua, Domini.
And thus ends the first sermon. And let's be clear, there are going to be more. It's not going to be too much of a spoiler to say that John the Evangelist is going to do some sermonizing in this play. And that it's a question here. We don't know for certain. Is this actually the opening of the play? How does this structurally function? How was that without knowing too much about the structure of the play yet? Thoughts about that as a speech? We should all do some meditating on holiness, sort of thing, kind of thing. Thoughts from the room? Who wants to leap in? Liza first, then Lois.
Well, actually, it was Lois's speech, so I think Lois should go first.
Oh, well, yes, I found it rather difficult because it seems all to be about meditation, the fact that you can't really express the thoughts of your heart, that meditation is all about an experience which is inexpressible, in which case, what is it doing in this play? It doesn't exactly get us off to a roaring start.
Yes, it is an interesting way to open a play, if it indeed is the opening of the play. Liza?
Yeah, I was similarly going to talk about the very meta nature of this, that you're not supposed to speak your prayer, you're supposed to meditate inwardly, and yet the only way for the audience to know what the actor means is for the actor to say it. So the mouth cannot express the thoughts of the heart. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where this goes, because I think we're about to see two characters who talk a lot.
Yes, we are going to go in a moment from a sermon of some description. That's a question of who John is talking to. He might not be talking to people. This might be some inward meditation on it. This text is not necessarily giving us all the information as to what is going on.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Lois.
Well, I just wondered what anybody else thought. Who is the sovereign he's addressing? Is this being spoken in front of a king, or is he just addressing God as sovereign? It seemed to me very odd. And then when he says, I'm telling you at the end, who is you? Is that the audience, or is that a congregation? It could be anything.
Oh, I think these are all excellent questions, of which there may not be answers. But they do give us the question of choices. I like the idea that, yes, is that sovereign the Lord, or is it a Lord? Who else is in the room? Other thoughts?
I wonder if it's something he's writing. I wonder if he's writing his meditations.
Oh, so the whole thing could be done like this. Yes, yes, the thought is the thoughts of the heart. Yes, it'd take even longer if I did it that way.
Well, yes. It depends what medium we're doing it in. That sort of thing speaks very well to either a video or audio piece where you can do extreme quill work in close up and enjoy that. Other thoughts before we get into some action? He said. Rachael.
This isn't really a big thing, but it's just the rhyming between that he does and that the writer does in English and Latin is just interesting to me. Just that going back and forth and rhyming between the two different languages. I think it's kind of interesting because I feel that gives the writer a little more freedom, like a little more freedom to write what they want, because when you're limited to one language, you can only rhyme with words in that language. And you can only, like, in the scheme of what he's writing, but to flip it into and have the two different languages, I feel like that freed him up to say, to put the word Jesus in there, or you know what I mean, to like give him a fourth word or something. You know what I'm saying? Like without it detracting from the meaning of like whatever this writer was trying to get across, without forsaking form,
Yeah,
Lois?
it's actually a rather unusual verse form as well. It's
Yeah.
they usually call it, I think, the Monk's Tale stanza because Chaucer used it in the Monk's Tale. I mean, it's an 8-line stanza, and it's not a tawarima, which is a more obvious one. It reverses the rhyme scheme in the second half of the stanza. But I think it's like the Rime Royale, which is a 7-line stanza that's used quite often. Those are the two, I think, that are used for serious characters. Presumably we'll get something completely different when the other people come on.
Well, Eric.
I was going to say that it sounds more like a prayer, like sort of it has a beginning and an end, and it ends on the same point, kind of like, it's kind of like if you look at the Lord's Prayer kind of thing, where it's like, Our Father who art in heaven, it's got that rhythm. Whereas, okay, this has Latin, but I mean, which is a bit of a cheat, I feel. But because, with Latin, you can just it's easy to go into that rhythmic sort of chant type rhythm. So which is very ecclesiastical, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that's just me.
Okay, we now have a scene with 2 people talking. And this goes on for a reasonable length. I think we'll let this scene run its course. There may be possible interesting textual issues in it, but we shall see how it flows. So we have the entrance of Eugenio and Irisdision.
Qui cum Deo Patri, granted by the Pope, 1,400, and never a day less. That hath heard this noble sermon, and thereon doth hope, e poena e culpa, here I them release. Is it not pity such a pulpit man to lose? I pray you, sir, let us hear more of your Pope Holiness, for methink I heard you preach on this at Paul's Cross.
Whom call you Pope Holy?
Such a fool as thou art that clappest ever in divinity.
All virtuous people to commend is my property.
Then is Caton false, and that he indicts, for he saith, nec te calaudas, nec te culpaberis ipse. Great laudations loveth these hypocrites, qui say calaudite, etc. No more to you at this time, but understand you this Latin?
Yea, sir, I trow.
Responde tunc domine doctor clericorum. But sir, know you any justice of quorum?
Why so?
A fellow of mine was taken with a cuculorum for a couple of horses he stole in an evening.
What would you have me do in that case?
Sursum corda for him to sing. Ye should have known well why.
I cannot sing.
No, sir, ye should but make a spring under a perch looking up toward the sky.
Without God be thy friend, that same death thou shalt die.
Marry, I beshrew his heart that so can prophesy.
What is thy name?
Read.
Eugenio, I trow? The same.
Sir, the devil strike off thy head. Whoreson, who taught thee so right to read? I trow some evil spirit be within thee.
In the city of Jerusalem that is so called, I fear thou wilt never come to that holy Sion that with 12 precious stones is surely walled. Full strait is the way thither to gone, and into that castle entering is none without thou acquaint thee with 2 porters before. Hope is the first, and faith the other one.
Lo, so ghostly he prateth evermore. Ye dare not cough, your conscience is so holy. But I pray you show me before, which is the way to yonder castle ye praise so greatly?
Over the mead of meekness mark thou the way. Then to the path of patience shalt thou pass into the land of largeness. Hold for the lay, and in the lane of business look thou not bash. Then measure in a marsh a fair manor house. Rest there hardily, and abide all night.
Nay, that I will not by this light. But what callest thou this way?
Via recta, leading to life. So David named it in his day, spes mea stated in via recta.
Passeth all men by this journey?
Nay, and the more pity, verily I say.
What be they that go that way most?
They that be inspired with the Holy Ghost, as innocents and virgins.
Marry, I know none such in all this coast.
They that go thither must be gratia electi.
Why, is there no other way but this?
Yes, on the left side another there is, that is called via obliqua et via circularis.
And whither draweth this?
Even right to death. Whoso walks that way himself he slayeth.
Sir, who goeth that way so ill?
All they that worketh the devil's will, as omnes iniquo in circuitu impii ambulantes.
Thou art a Lola, by my troth I warrant. How many bypaths be in that way?
60 and odd, I say.
Then one cannot fail where he go by night or day. But may a man go to the stews that way at his pleasure, if he list to play?
It brings men to the seat of rueful array. The lady of confusion lieth therein, that Babylon is called. She is the end of all sin.
Which way coasteth that country?
To an isle in the north, I say, ab aquilone pandetur omne malum.
That is the first place that men should assay, whether it be hedged or walled.
With boughs and trees it is marvellously paled. There groweth the elders of envy, staked with pride, full high, and the briars of backbiting with wrath reaved about, full of slouthy bushes and lecherous thorns dry, with gluttonous posts and coveties railed throughout, and at mischief's gate many doth in run.
And where do they all become?
Down to the dungeon where the devil dwelleth, Lucifer, that loathly lord that is in Baal blissus. There is woe upon woe, as Christ us telleth, all that made disease and nothing please, ever restless. There is frost, there is fire, hope is lost, and her desire. There care hath no recover. Without pity there is pain. To cry for mercy it is in vain, for grace is gone forever. Fumus tormentorum suorum ascendit in saecula saeculorum, lo! Thus hath lost wedded confusion Lucifer's daughter, damnation, in hell to have heritage. Septum dominium peccati est mors.
In faith, that is a knavish way to talk. Now a while of some mirth let us talk, for I forsake that passage.
Now farewell, sir, and have good day, for I must go another way. Forget not my reasons sage.
What, will you go your way? Ye have done a fair journey today.
It is time for to be walking, for I am weary of your talking.
And indeed, exit Irisdision. Eugenio is left alone.
Lo, sirs, he spake full holily. But yet I beshrew him for all his clergy. He may well be called witless Sir Will, for I trow his brain is steadfast as a windmill. But now well remembered, my books Amoromis. I would have a plaster for all harm, some fair wench to lie in mine arms, that would avoid all strifes. It were to me administrate nos, et restaurate nos, also comfortate nos. Yea, and sometime I will take men's wives, for cuckold makers have merrier lives than they do that all the cost, as to wed at the church door, and there to be sworn. Perhaps her husband should have an horn. Then may he curse the time that ever he was born, for all the love is lost. Clerks say that of wedlock God that knot doth knit, and yet women do venture to break it. For though their souls should lie in hell pit, they will use that sorry work. And if they so die, Atropus cometh full suddenly, and, or they beware, full slyly he leadeth them all down in the dark. The courtesy of England is oft to kiss, and of itself it is lechery where pleasure is. All young folk remember this, intentio judicat quenquam. So great delight thou mayst have therein, that afore God it is deadly sin. But farewell, yonder cometh Sir William of Trentram.
Exit Eugenio, no entrance at all for Sir William of Trentram. We will never meet Sir William of Trentram. There is no Sir William, as far as we know, unless that person has another name. I think you're starting to get a sense of the absences and presences in this text. Liza, do you want to leave it?
What if there never was a Sir William? What if it's just a joke that this Vice character is telling? I've got to go. There's that guy.
I've got to go. Oh, hang on. I think I can hear my mother calling.
Yeah.
or he's confusing St. John with Sir William of Trentram.
Yeah, Lois.
Yeah, I'm wondering because actually I think Eugenio said of Irisdision that he may well be called witless Sir Will. So maybe he is Sir William of Trentram and these scenes are in the wrong order.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or that there's more that we're missing from that character. Yeah. So there's there's some really good bits in this. I really like that last speech with Eugenio as really gets into the fun things in life, shall we say.
Yes. It's okay to kiss people as long as you don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
It is lechery where pleasure is.
Yeah, boy.
Because fun is illegal.
Yeah. Yes, I loved down to the dungeon where the devil dwelleth. Great alliteration, and that whole there is frost, there is fire, hope is lost, and her desire. I mean, yeah, it's wonderful when it goes into that.
Oh my gosh, that bit was so much fun, and I loved the change in rhythm. It seemed really sort of haunting. Earlier, Irisdision says he can't sing, so it might well not be a song. Otherwise, I would say maybe it indicated text to be sung, but the rhythm changes, and I guess you'd have to mark that in some way if you were staging it.
Yeah, I really all that may disease and nothing please ever restless. The sort of random rhymes in the middle of lines is really pleasing, and playful, and it's very rare not to have a morality play or an interlude that doesn't involve some young gallant just saying, are there any sex workers available? It was basically, I was just waiting for that to pop up because it's just something that seems to happen. And an interesting expectation of plays that in theory are, obviously against such activities, but the way it's presented, it's like it's expected. That's what the young are going to do. So it's sort of making it okay in a weird, in a sort of reverse ferret kind of way. So there's a lot of that. I was particularly I was glad to note the sign that the characters have got their names literally on them, and we've got that in other plays as well. So it's not an entirely unknown thing of characters coming on with literally labels, like they're in a Spike Milligan sketch. Eric.
There seems to be. I find it interesting that Eugenio is called Eugenio because, obviously, sort of, I guess in there are theories about how the characters are named. I looked this up 5 minutes ago, so I'm going to pretend to know about it. And the theory is that Eugenio obviously comes from Greek. And then, but then that could mean two things. It could mean polite, or it could mean sort of someone of noble birth. Whereas Irisdision is supposed to be seen as someone who is a messenger of Zion or something, but I don't know if that's relevant. Yeah.
I mean, Iris was the messenger of Zeus, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was. Well, until she got replaced.
They all get replaced eventually.
Except Ganymede.
Lois.
Yeah, I was intrigued by this bit where Eugenio says that Irisdision sounds like a Lollar, because I think that might be Lollard, but if it is, then that makes this play sound a lot earlier, because they weren't still talking about Lollards in the 16th century, were they?
I don't know whether it still crops up as in passing.
It might be a generalized insult rather than referring to a specific thing. It might just be kind of a way of calling someone a heretic, and people might have forgotten what the specific meaning was, but I'm spitballing here. I don't have authority.
Yeah, could have been a bit like Puritan. I mean, because I think that was the same thing, you know, strict religious type.
Yes, because we do have a sort of differing. The two characters do have slightly different views on life. I think it's fair to say. Rachael.
I'm just gonna go back to the language again, because I feel like there's so much here that's like happening. Like when we were doing one of Lily's plays, this came up a lot. Like this was hitting me a lot from looking at the text, but I feel like with some of these people, there's there's this heavier like poetic influence, and I feel like this is happening with this person here. Like this very much is like, this is so much like poetry, and like it is, they're all poetry, but this is so like linguistically like poetic, and it just reminds me of his stuff. And it also reminds me of Waiting for Godot, this part between Eugenio and Irisdision, and then also that going back to the Latin thing, the first I don't know what it's called, but like it comes up in like Catulus's poetry, that in Latin there's like a form where it's like it's like 20 syllables and then 14 syllables, 20 syllables and 14 syllables, and we start off with like, I don't know, like in part of that form with like John's thing at the beginning, and then I think there's a lot of like 14 and then like 17, or not 14 and like 7 syllable things. This is I'm just, I don't know, I'm counting syllables here, is what I'm saying.
Eric.
Since we're talking about language, like one of the last things that Irisdision says is something like, with boughs and trees it is marvelously paled, and then their growth the elders of envy and the briars of backbiting, and so on and so forth. And like all those are poisonous plants, right? I'm not just like, because elders is like sort of elderberries, I'm guessing, or some sort of plant.
Yeah.
And then briars are.
They confuse, in texts like this, they confuse the elder bush with the alder tree. And they say that the alder tree was the tree that Judas hanged himself from. But elder bushes, which bear elder flowers and elder berries, also have, occasionally they have sort of like mystical connotations, but they also might just be bushes with delicious flowers on them. Who knows?
And yeah, it's interesting that, you know, are they listening to the sermon that John is making at the beginning, or is one of them making a bit of a sermon themselves? At the very beginning of the scene, it could be that they're standing at Speaker's Corner and listening to this. But it seemed like if we assume that there are bits missing in places where occasionally the text does sort of go from like it skipped a track slightly. I wondered whether Irisdision was actually doing a sermon and was interrupted by Eugenio rather than listening to John.
Oh right.
I don't know if that's there might be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I just felt there was
Yeah.
there was something about that I wasn't actually wholly sure about.
Yeah.
Because I'm not wholly sure that they exist in the same universe.
Yeah.
Because you know, Eugenio is talking about Paul's cross.
Yeah.
So are they contemporary figures? Listening to the ghost of John the Evangelist. You know, it's you know, is John the Evangelist just the something separate who turns up?
I think it's clown magic. The vice is always contemporary.
Rachael.
My point I was trying to make, that I forgot I was trying to make when I brought it up, was that I feel like he's trying to make room for both Latin and English in this play, and that's why there's this odder rhythm, because this is a rhythm that it's like a weird I feel like he's playing on a rhythm of like Latin poetry and like creating some like, this is all my speculation, but like and I lost my point again. Oh no. Yeah.
We'll come back to you if you can grasp that nettle again, Lois.
Yeah, well, if you're thinking of the rhythms of Latin poetry, I mean, it's interesting because a medieval writer in Latin would have been using rhythms that were very much like those in vernacular poetry, because they'd really gone over to rhyme and to a different sort of rhythm, as opposed to the sort of Latin, the classical scansion, which was all in terms of length of syllables and quantities. I mean, I don't know that much about this, but so it is kind of interesting. I mean, this may be a writer who's kind of caught between what he's learned in Latin and what he's learned in English. But yeah, the whole thing is weird. It's sort of as if Euridision is the other half of St. John, and somehow or other they're both in this play. I don't know whether. I remember being told, I visited a place called Rocamadour once in southern France, and there was some theory that it was founded by Nicodemus, who, after the death of Christ, sailed to France and found this rock and became a hermit there and changed his name to Amadour. And if we imagine that John the Evangelist did something similar and decided to call himself Irisdision for reasons unknown, then we've got a story here.
There's a magical pantomime-ish transformation scene when it changes from into Irisdision. Yeah, the use of Latin is really interesting. I mean, it's quite a barrier. It's not like it's Latin where you say a Latin phrase and then you go into an English version of it and then you roll off it. This Latin is really embedded into the sentences that are going on around them, and the thought process. It's quite difficult to follow if you don't at times if you don't have a grounding in that, which most people don't. David, I'll go to Eric in a moment, but David first.
Sorry, do you think then that suggests a particular audience for this play?
I would think so. Yeah. I don't know if the rest of the room thinks so, but it doesn't quite feel like it's that sort of popular street kind of theatre in that sense. It feels much more something for boys or by boys in an indoor kind of context, some sort of interlude kind of thing. I'm now babbling, so I will stop. Eric, then anyone else?
Yeah, I was going to say about the Latin. I don't know enough Latin to sort of, talk about what they're talking about in the Latin, but it seems to be like the Irisdision is going from sort of making judgments that seem to be accepted more or less by Eugenio to sort of getting darker and darker and sounding more and more like incantation rather than sort of, like the whole, I don't know, Fumus Tormentorum. I don't know if it's just the way Liza read it as well, but she was enjoying that. But yeah, it was just it sounded like it was getting darker and darker as opposed to like sort of, reinforcing Latin in church.
That section is it's mostly tetrameter. That is, the lines aren't strictly in meter, but usually there are 4 stresses, and often the lines are also trochaic, and when things get trochaic, trochees are primal. A trochee, for those watching, if you don't know what it is, a lot of this verse is iambic. Iambic starts on an unstressed syllable. It goes da-dum. A trochee starts on a stressed syllable, so it goes dum, 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 dum. And it's a little bit scarier and a little bit more primal in feeling. So some of these lines, as you go on, are iambic, but it starts with, there is frost, there is fire, hope is lost and her desire. So, it does sound like a spell. We're used to thinking of that. There are other places you can hear this rhythm used for spells, which I will not talk about.
Walk away from that sentence. It's interesting that Eugenio is not wholly saying let's all give ourselves up to fun and pleasures. He is asking for more sort of, can we have a little bit of fun, please? I'm not denying the existence of God and all the good works, but could we not be quite so miserable all the time?
No, fun is illegal.
Eric.
Yeah, you kind of get the impression that usually like characters are better defined. You get like, you know, usually if it's a vice character, like, you know, like later Greg will be like evil counsel or something where you know exactly what that's going to be. Whereas with Irisdision and Eugenio, you kind of feel like it's not quite clear yet. It's brewing.
Any final thoughts before we move into the next portion? David.
I mean, just responding to Eric, I mean, in a way, Eugenio is more a kind of everyman, isn't he? I mean, the point is he could be moved back and forth by the events. I think. Right.
Yeah, and if we assumed, say, that this was for an audience of perhaps of younger people being educated, this slightly gallantish quality to him of going, this is the person you could be, children, or that might be the people who are acting it for a different kind of audience. I'm just spitballing again. Random thoughts. You can ignore or contradict them if you so please. Rachael, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, this is what I meant by that. It's kind of like Waiting for Godot, and that it's how John's introduction is this personal meditation. It's these two guys talking in between each other that kind of create like a meditative like dialogue, because they're talking about like the part where they're talking about like going different ways and things like that. It could be that somebody's going to heaven and somebody's going like on the path to heaven or on the path to hell, and they just happen to meet in the crossroads or something like that.
Though to be fair, we've already done the early modern Waiting for Godot. It's called King Darius. It's running gag that nobody knows and nobody understands apart from Greg and Liza.
Never to be forgotten.
I wasn't even there, and I know about this because of all the discussion around it.
We're still so traumatized. I still love that play. It's just wrong on so many levels. Okay, anyway, we'll continue with this play. So we've had a little scenette, and eyes down, people, because St. John's back.
That Lord which is perpetual principle conserve and keep this congregation and cover you with his mantle perpetual. After that ye do pass with death's visitation, this prince bring you to that holy nation where love doth dwell with virginity. And to give you plain information, in that realm dwelleth the Holy Trinity. I am that John that presently doth appear, called the grace of God by interpretation. And of my doctrine, if ye list to hear, much can I show you of Christ's incarnation and of his passion. For verily I was there. I saw him hang on the cross on high, on high. His mother and I stood there under, and I heard when he called, Eli, Eli, and saw Longius smite his heart asunder. His laws to the people will I preach, and all that ever do follow me in peace. The kingdom of heaven their souls shall reach, there having joy that never shall cease. But now the true love that we should to God owe, men giveth it to riches that is mutable. Full sore they will it repent, I trow, that ever they were of minds so unstable. If any man will have riches ghostly, I will hastily again be here, and thereof he shall have gladly. At all times I will him cheer. My coming hither was for your furtherance, and now I leave you in God's governance.
And indeed, so indeed he does. Let's be fair to John. His sermons are not long. We have had far longer sermonizing from other figures. So it's a nice break in the action. I'm going to continue being nice and positive about this. He was there.
Yeah.
He was there, and that's a really nice moment in that.
Yeah.
Actually, I really like that bit.
Yeah, I thought that bit was really impressive, but as a sermon, it's a mess. I mean, it's just lots of different bits, and that weird bit too about where heaven dwells with virginity. Let's get that in.
Yeah.
Nothing about this has come up before. Well, I suppose we've had a lot about cuckolding, but yeah, it's just so odd. It's just bits and pieces.
Again, that's why I'm sort of I keep leaning towards a youth audience for that, of just going, no sex before marriage, people, no fun, no naughty stuff. Yeah, you're right. I think that's sort of the general takeaway from the play overall is it's very bitty. The previous scene was very bitty in the sense that it sort of jumped every so often, like there's some lines missing when they change subject. Presumably that's something that happened with the text reaching the printer. The printer maybe made some trims. Maybe there's a doctrinal reason why bits were removed. We haven't really talked about doctrine, because that's what is this play trying to say, and whether that gives us a better idea of when it might date from. It's feeling fairly Protestant, it has to be said, in tone and thought, but then that might be misleading.
It's not really terribly different from things like the Pardoners, the Parson's sermon in Chaucer. Actually, I mean, with all the talk about the 7 deadly sins and all the ways you can go wrong. I don't know. I think some of that could be a lot older. But yeah, I just wonder about it, whether Irisdision originally said something that was too doctrinal one way or the other, and they got rid of him and put in St. John from somewhere else that was at least unexceptionable, and even if it didn't fit in with anything. I don't know.
It has an interesting Dadaist quality to it. I find interesting. Other thoughts on St. John before we go into another scene with 2 people in? Eric.
What's it called? There's no Latin in this, which is interesting compared to the previous one. And also the interesting thing is that the rhyme scheme changes compared to the previous one. Like if you take the 2 speeches next to each other, the rhyme scheme goes from I don't know, I think it's line, then A, B, 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 A. I might have counted wrongly. I don't know. I can't count anymore. And then this one is A, B, A, B. So I don't know. It's much faster.
Yes, I make it 3 8-line stanzas, and as Eric says, that 6-line tag that's a quatrain and a couplet.
So yeah, it's not quite the same. It seems slightly different. So there's interesting questions there. Rachael, did you want to jump in?
I was just gonna say that during part of this speech, it's I came to it's where is John actually? Even the place that they're in, there's stage directions, but for
those stage directions may be inferred. Actually, they might not. I'm not sure that the original text has any entrance or exit notation. I need to confirm that. But there really isn't any clear indicators beyond just the words.
Yeah, even the space that they occupy is ambiguous. I feel that talk about meditation, this is a meditative journey, that these people are all going on, and maybe that's why there's sort of that lack of definite place where you can put them physically, or physical definition of where they are and when they're coming in and out.
Yeah, where is this happening? Where is St. John happening? Is St. John happening in the same place everybody else is happening? David.
As we move into the next dialogue, Eugenio makes specific reference to some of the things that St. John has said in this sermon, which suggests to me that Eugenio has also heard the first sermon. That's kind of in structural terms. I can sort of see. I don't know visually how it would have been staged, but possibly maybe John the Evangelist is maybe above. And Eugenio is an observer, is an auditor, and whereas Actio doesn't seem to have heard St. John, so Eugenio is slightly more a mediator. And the first time I read it, because you'd cast me as Eugenio, I'd wanted to see Eugenio as a more positive character. In contrast to Actio, but of course that's not really the case. They're both lacking any strength of character. But
well, we'll gather some more data on that in a moment. Very briefly, Eric, before we move on.
I was just going to say that in terms of language, because we've been talking about language and stuff, it kind of feels like this one might be more worldly, more secular compared to like the previous one. The previous one is more sacred/religious compared to this one, because this one is all in English. It's perfectly understandable to anyone who is there. Whereas the Latin seems to be more sort of more to preach and sermonize, whereas this one seems to be more personal. Like he talks about I heard when he cried, Eli, Eli, and stuff, and it's like all the emotion is changing like throughout, whereas the other one doesn't have that much emotion.
Yes, he's bearing witness, and that's a very emotive thing. David.
Sorry, again, in relation to that, it's interesting that Eugenio speaks in Latin at certain times. He uses Latin phrases, whereas Actio doesn't, I think.
Well, let's gather some information on Actio, as Actio is going to do some acting. I haven't been sitting on that for years. Sorry, not sorry. Okay, so we have the entrance of Actio, and in a moment we'll have the entrance of Eugenio to him or her, depending on who we decide this person is.
Now merry might you be. Who was that called me? So early today, one resided me with a bowl of water. Here was a shrewd matter, suddenly won to a fray. It was some knave, my brother, beshrew him and none other. For that array, I was fast asleep, till I felt the wet. Full still I lay, he brake mine old custom, for I would have lain till noon, and then have risen to play. But now to the purpose, for by the faith that now goes, I love to go gay, and with other men's wives, that be wanton of lives, oft do I run away, and wheresoever I go, one good condition have I so, I use never truth to say. Also I have a great disease, if ye will me leave, even here, sirs, in the bottom of my sleeve.
I think we do need to pause there before we go into the scene, because there's so much good material in there. Actio has some really clear. Is quite happy to have fun with everyone. The great disease at the bottom of my sleeve is I don't even know if I want to be this is a family show. The nature of that venereal disease and what is dripping out of what, and the way that image suggests itself, whether I'm just taking that too far or not, or well, it's too late. I'm not now. But all the stuff about the bowl of water and that element at the beginning, it was quite interesting. Thoughts in the room, Rachael? You were reading it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I definitely he does not use Latin as a I think the Latin here is also being thrown in, not just for that this is probably being presented to a more educated audience, but also like to distinguish the class of the characters, like in this play. And also, yeah, that part where he wets himself. Yeah.
Well, Well, I think he's just talking about somebody waking him up by sloshing water all over him, isn't he?
Yeah. So some knave, my brother, decide to I don't know if it's a practical joke or it's just the only way to get him out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
Standing orders of the household. Eric.
Just a bit about random association, I guess, but the bit about the sleeve just reminded me of that bit from I think it's Troublesome Rain, where one of the nobles is hiding food in his sleeves or something, which was jest that was carried through. I don't know, that was kind of random, but that's what I thought of at the time.
Yeah, sleeves could be used to carry things, and maybe if you had a hole in your sleeve, if he'd stolen a lot of money, maybe the coins were falling out of it or something. Maybe that's because Eugenio offers to heal his coat in the scene that's just coming up.
Yeah. Yes, and the sleeve of an academic gown, hangs down. It's actually like a giant pocket. You can put an enormous amount in it. And that is based on the sort of costumes people were wearing, in this period. So, yeah, they could all be wearing things with big sleeves.
And
it's true. And also that wonderful line he has, "I love to go gay," which basically means I love to dress fashionable. And so the sleeves might be an exaggerated, long, baggy, voluminous. Anyway, sorry, Rob.
Yeah, no, and just to backtrack on my earlier crudeness, the much more straightforward thing of if there's a hole in his pocket, all his money has run away. Reference there, which is probably where we're going. But there's no layer of vice which I won't try and dig up if possible, even if it's not there. Anyway, we'll read on because we do need to. It's not a long play, but we've discussed it in quite a lot of detail so far, so we need to crack on a little bit. So Actio's made a declaration of who they are. Eugenio joins them.
By God, sir, and I do lay a plaster to your coat. I will heal it. I dare lay a groat.
Eugenio, from whence come you?
From thence that you were spoke of right now. Ye shall have an office.
What is that? I pray you tell me.
By my faith, ye shall be hangman of Calais. Thereto ye be appointed, verily.
Then the first man that shall be hanged shalt thou be. For I tell thee I will begin with thee.
Nay, sir, but hark what I shall thee say. Here was one late this same day that dispraised riches worldly. He said that doth forsake prosperity and take him to wilful poverty, he shall have joy eternally.
What was he?
A doctor, as he seemed me. He spake as holily as though God had been his cousin.
Yea, but was he not mired with hypocrisy?
No, man, he spake so ghostly, he had almost changed my mood. I had thought to give away my good, and then ask myself for charity.
Why wouldst thou have been so witty? Nay, thou art a fool, and thou wilt, for any egging, give away thine own good, and go thyself a begging. For so will not I do yet, trust me.
Sir, he promised most largely that I should enjoy live ever, where I shall die never. Thus also he said verily that I should feel there no ill, and have all that I desire will, and see God in his majesty. Also he promised me a greater hire, that I should have all that I would desire.
I rede thee lay that thought away, for mayest thou not see all day, that they that useth sport and play liveth at ease merrily. They have most heartiest rest, and fareth of the best, that thus spendeth their lives in jollity.
Well then, my wit I will renew, for I trow thou sayest full true. If I do it and afterward rue it, as to give away my good, I trow I should it forethink. Without a cup then might I drink, for that purse that sewneth not trink, his master weareth a threadbare hood.
Yea, man, that is true indeed. But let us go walk a space, for evil counsel hither will speed. That person, I trow, he be devoid of all grace.
Go we hence then in time, hastily we will come again. for John will be here by prime. His sermon would I hear fame.
And in theory, they go out. But we can't be certain of any of the stage directions. Yeah, it seems like Eugenio has been listening. Has definitely been listening to some of these things. And there's this guy. He speaks as holy as though God had been his cousin.
Yeah.
Actio's not really convinced. Doesn't seem convinced by any of that. Not really, Sure, he wasn't a hypocrite, because these people usually are. Yeah. So there's almost like I don't know if I want to say this too loud. It's almost like there's a plot developing here, people. There's just the hints of one just starting to bubble away. Just a teensy bit of it. Any thoughts on that, Liza?
Yeah, it's weird how Eugenio both relapses and doesn't relapse.
Mm-hmm.
He lets Actio persuade him that Irisdision was not, in fact, telling him the right things. But then his last is saying that he really wants to hear John's next sermon. And I think it's actually kind of a realistic portrayal of where your principles falter is where they start to affect your personal comfort. Like, does he actually, he says, if I should do it and afterward rue it as to give away my good, I trow I should it forthink. Without a cup then might I drink. Saying, well, I could give away my money to the poor, use it to get drunk, and yeah, it's really a hard choice here.
Yeah, there's some nice stuff there, and that question it often comes up of the company you keep, the company you keep leading you into dangerous habits, and we may be coming to more of that theme next. So I think we need to move forward, for we have the appearance of Evil Counsel. We think it's reasonable to say that Evil Counsel has the stage. Work the audience. Feel free, audience, to respond if you like.
By your leave, let me come next. What doth all this company here? Whereafter is your gaping? Yeah, I mean you, young lady. By our lady and master, I have sought nigh and far, for since I came from Rochester, I have spent all my winning. By our lady, I will no more go to Coventry, for there knaves set me in the pillory and threw eggs at my head, and so sore that my nose did bleed. Of white wine gallons 30 waste. Sometime in London did I dwell, I was prentice there with Evil Counsel, and so men calleth me. I hope again to go thither. Better wine for a start. If summer will come and fair weather and live full merrily, I have sought England through and through, village, town, city, and borough, with many a thousand bequainted I am, as ill-tongued churls and many a proud gentleman that shrewdly roundeth many a pistle when they in young wives' ears doth whistle of matters pertaining to Venus's acts. Fair flattering words and pretty knacks, both men and women, but they bring to lechery. Through me, Evil Counsel, to live in Advertry. In Cornwall I have been, long time ago, and in Kent, Westminster, St. Catherine's, in Unthrift's Rent. There I rested very lately. Now, fain would I have a master. That will do by my counsel, for though he spend and be a waster, to get money I can teach him the craft well.
And we have
what art thou that speaketh thus?
Marry, sir, a man that would have a service, great need have I there too.
Why, what service canst thou do?
Both steal and lie, and on your errand go to fetch another man's wife to your bed.
If 5 such things may be sped, I am glad that we be met.
In England shall nothing me let. With you will I bide forever. But master, have ye any wife?
Yea, more than 25 by my life. But some of their men keep
Why?
it
Marry, sir, no force. It costeth you the less money, but you have good cheer and ye come.
Yea, at meat I am merry, and at bed if I list to play.
And their husbands be out of the way, or else ye come not there.
Yes, daily, and make good cheer, and not spied at all. I have such policy.
I am glad that ye be thus so witty. And, sir, if you will have a fresh, lusty trull, I will get you a housewife that can spin a pound of wool.
Then we will drink wine at the full in one place, if thou canst help me.
I pray you tell me, what is she?
An artificer's wife, a pretty woman.
Sir, I will go to my brother Temptation, and then to wanton youth I will make a station. For between us 3 of her your pleasure ye shall have heartily.
Shall I go with you also?
Yea, sir, and if it please you so to do. How say you? Have not they merry lives that may kiss and base other men's wives? Lo, youth is full of jollity, but when saw you your brother's sensuality?
Sir, I saw him, I left him on the plain of Salisbury. He told me that he would lift some good fellow from his thrift. And as I trow, somewhat he will get to make with the penny. Many one for their good do labor and sweat. But he doth not so. He getteth it lightly.
Sir, he did me a shrewd turn, as I you tell.
Pray thee, show me how it befell.
The last day, sir, I wist the buttock that he were on his fist would have trod my hen, and I caught up a rottock and hit him on the buttock. There lay on then.
Whereby knowest thou it was he?
For he had a bell about his cue, and thereby each him knew. I bid him hold in the wind till at the last he had his mind. God gave him an ill pew.
And what meat did thou give him? Say on, heartily.
Ah, a fair piece of bacon and a black bowl for a body.
By Jesu, this is a gentle meat for a hawk. To keep birds thou art very cunning. Thy thrift, I trow, is laid a summons. But tell me, where is thy warning?
Sir, at the shoes is my most abiding, otherwise going and sometime riding. And if the ground be slipper and sliding, in faith I full down most linging.
What some pleasure there appears. Beshrew your head between your ears.
Oh, nay, sir, it shall be yours and theirs. For when a man both enow, let him part with his neighbours.
It is thy destiny, I trow, for to be clad all in briars and ride the horse with 4 ears.
Nay, sir, not afore you, for I love ill to waiter. A ride in a saddle, but you shall ride in a halter.
In good faith, knave, thou shalt bear me a stripe.
And thou shalt have another, and I can hit thee aright.
Why smittest thou not? Come off.
Nay, I trow ye dupe and scoff, but I would not for £100 fight with thee.
Why so? Tell me.
For I never fought with man, but he tight. And so should you, and ye did my strikes abide.
Marry, I had liever thou were tied. Thou art as manly as ill-achieving. Thou art a good bold fellow to go a thieving.
Well, let us go to unthrifts a while hence, and let some other keep residence, for I dare lay thereon 40 pence. We shall have a sermon all night.
I trow then he will come hither, that laid first in Principio together.
Go we, for we too will go thither, thereas we will make merry by this light.
And they both exit, and are
I imagine
never
them skipping
seen
off.
again, and encounter nobody else. It's an interesting thematically connected section, and I wonder whether there's a wider thing where they're supposed to lead people or have led people into bad ways, but that is absent here, and we just get this as a sort of mini interlude, or whether this is purely why they're here, is to just demonstrate how low you can go. There's some really good stuff in here. There's some really interesting things. Ride the horse with 4 ears. Anyone got a gloss on that one?
Oh, Lois, I want to hear what you say first.
Well, this is just a guess, really, but I was thinking that they could be pulled apart if there were horses going in 2 different directions, and they were, hang drawn and quartered. I don't know. This would be one way of dying. It's obviously referring to some kind of punishment.
I had thought it was more like being in when someone says to ride the 3-legged mare, they mean to be hanged on the gallows a little. And then, so I thought maybe the horse with 4 ears is the cart that takes you there, which is pulled by 2 horses who have 4 ears between them. That I don't have certain knowledge. That's just the best I could come up with on the spot. Eric, do you know about this horse?
No, I got completely lost at that point, but I just thought it was some sort of innuendo, because in English, in modern day English, we would say make the beast with 2 backs. So
Thank you, Robert. Thank you.
I could see that coming. I could see that coming.
Yes.
And I almost tried to preempt it.
I was trying to come up with a way of saying it without saying it. And I was
that phrase that Eric has quoted actually is it's certainly current in the early 1600s. I don't know about earlier, but sex or death. Sex or death, which are very similar according to some writers. So,
I have to say, I'm sorry, I just took that whole thing as an odd double entendre. It was glorious by the end of it. Hanging a bell about his cue. I just thought it can't be anything else.
Yeah, there's lots of. I mean, they're obviously discussing. How many wives have you got? Well, I've got 25. One at a time. Obviously, somebody else keeps them. There's a lot of good cuckoldry business. Leaving someone on the plain of Salisbury, and all those sort of bits that referencing specific localities as well, and then referencing all these offstage people that we the other bad people that are out there, sensuality and temptation and things. Greg, then Eric.
The one speech that utterly confused me was, "The last day, sir, I wist the puttock that he wear on his fist." One, which I could not get my head round even when I was saying it, and I thought it made more sense then.
A puttock is a carrion bird, like a noble would carry a falcon on their fist. They'd wear a leather glove and they'd have a falcon sitting there that was masked so it wouldn't fly away. But sensuality just carries a puttock, who's like a kite or some other carrion bird, and it would have trod. Trod is a word used about mating of birds. So like a rooster would tread a hen, and presumably this bird also wants to have sex with a female bird that evil counsel has. So he throws a rock at his butt, and I don't even.
So actually, I wasn't that far off then, really.
Sex or death. Sex or death. Eric, you're obviously delighted by the amount of birds available.
No, I was just gonna say that the what's it called, the plane on the plain of Salisbury. I thought that was maybe a reference to a battle, because I know that that's a battlefield, like supposed to be like legendary sort of battlefield. But I don't know if that's just me.
Rachael.
This is just a thing that because Actio's coming up again, and he was saying that he was going to hang Eugenio before, that this is how before it seemed unclear to me like exactly where they were. I feel like if they're bringing up Salisbury, it could just be, you know, during, I guess, Christian persecution, during like Roman times, like, but it isn't it when the empire was far enough that it did reach all the way to the UK, and that could explain sort of this bringing the Latin into this English, you know, this English play, like thematically, you know what I mean? Like they're like I feel like Actio has some high position, like he's some what do you call it, a Roman, I don't know, a Roman person, like who's in a high position.
Yes, because we're going back a while to when Eugenio and Actio are doing their sort of if I was a hangman, I would hang you first banter, or bants. I think actually bants is the more appropriate word for that kind of dialogue.
Yeah, there have been hanging jokes since scene one. Eugenio and Irisdision had a couple. I sort of wonder to have I mean, obviously exaggerated for comic effect, but to have 25 sex workers working for him, there would only be a small number of people in a city like London, assuming this might be a London play from the reference to Paul's Cross. There would only be a handful of people in the city of London who this might be referring to, and I wonder if it's a caricature of someone specific. If this play were a little later, I'd say Philip Henslowe, but earlier Henslowe equivalent, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that they're sex. I think they're people being cuckolded. I think the sex workers come later.
Yeah, that's why he says he's got all these wives. They're other people's wives. You know, it's like there was a sort of jokey poem, I think, of this period where a father says to his son, you know, you really must take a wife, and the boy says, right, father, which wife shall I take? You know, I mean, whose wife shall I take? And it's the same idea, you know, just committing adultery all over the place. I think that it does vaguely tie in. We've had stuff about adultery before.
Yeah, I mean, it is tying in thematically, even if it's not directly connecting with the plot in a way that, you know, that it's not like these people are talking about what they've got up to with Actio or Eugenio. You know, these are the kind of influences they should be avoiding. So they're a sort of near miss in the action, but they don't actually intersect. But then a lot of people don't intersect in this play, and that's quite interesting. David?
I just wonder a way in which they might have intersected or could intersect is if they actually doubled, so that evil counsel were Actio and idleness is Eugenio, and just it's almost as if, like flicking a switch, they move into their kind of darker halves. They'll take off their labels and put on another label. Because again, evil counsel is much more active, so he's Actio, and Eugenio, idleness is again led by evil counsel in the way that Actio leads Eugenio.
It's an interesting point about doubling. If we were assuming that there are some missing scenes or missing options in this, it might be that there is a little bit of business between these scenes, so that that doubling would be a more pragmatic option, and that they have some connection that way. That's a possibility. On a practical sense, I mean, it is that idea of does it matter that they meet, and that's perhaps a question. Does it matter that whether this text needs more, or is it enough in its own right? I just want to move us into the final motions, as it were. Let's get to the end of the text before we make our final assessments. Limber up, John. You get some dialogue. In a moment, you actually it's not a lot of what I would call dialogue, but you do actually talk vaguely at specific individuals, and let's enjoy that. But for the moment, we have the return of Actio and Eugenio.
Ah, sir, I have been long away. I said I would see you by the light day.
There have been a fair array, where we two have been. There was laying of the law, and all was not worth a new straw, so God help me.
Sir, I saw the wench that did your neck claw, that bare in her hand a gay gow. Methought it was like a pall of a whiting. She held me with a tale of tit merry tally, till my thrift was gone as quit as a dally. God wot, it is a nice thing.
Peace, man, ye shall hear a sermon in fashion of the eagle that riseth full high. If he do hear thy exclamation, he will make thee to fly.
Not in a string, I trow. Peace, for he is come now.
Enters
O
John.
men, unkind, wretched, and mortal, hearken to this parable that I shall tell.
The hearing thereof give you I shall.
And I too do by your counsel, if ye say well.
Now I begin. Give good audience. 2 men ascended once to a temple to pray, their conversation having great difference. It was the Pharisee and the publican, I say. 2 ensamples by them perceive we may. The great pride of the Pharisee, other men's faults he dispraised aye, and his own counsel hid under false hue. In the publican's prayers there was then a great excellence of meekness. He despised himself, a wretched man, thinking each creature exceeded him in goodness. His faults he did confess with great sorrow for his transgression. And in the Pharisee's prayer did express of full pride and adulation. He prayed not, but praised himself there, standing upright with a pert face, the mass beginning with confiteor and endeth with Deo gratias, even the reverse he did in this case. There the mass endeth, he began proudly, making no confession of his trespass, but said, Deo gratias ago tibi, in that he thanked God he was not to blame, but in that he thanked him not with very meekness. 3 species of sin he rehearsed by name, in which all sins be comprehended express. By raveners is understand covetize, in unrightful to say pride of him than, in advoutry all lechery that man can rehearse. And thus he excused himself and slandered the publican. I pay my tithe, he said also. And so he did, but not of the best. In that came he was like to, for he tithed alway of the worst. Twice in the week, he said, he did fast. From meat and drink he did, but not from deadly sin. And that is the fast that pleaseth God best. But thereat hypocrites will not begin. Against God he sinned grievously, in that he justified himself so, and his even Christian slandering maliciously to testimonium per hiberis te ipso, et testimonium tuum non est verum, I say so. Wherefore God did him divide from the 9 parts of angels the 10th. So there Lucifer is fallen for his pride. The gospel said, Who doth high, him shall be ho. All they that praiseth themselves do sin, be you sure. And so, you cursed men, do your cure, for by God's judgment, if ye forsake not your sin, be you sure you go to hell. Wherefore, repent.
I cry, God, mercy for mine offense. My wicked life I do repent.
Also I am sorry of my negligence. Your doctrine I will follow full meekly.
This sample God saith us too, that we should consider it wisely. Who deemeth himself good is far therefro, and he that thinketh himself sinfulest is blessed hardly. Think now that your purpose was set cursedly, in sin thus to lead lives vain, under color of virtue, deeming yourself good. You and all they that it doth sustain be worse than the Pharisee. Men's laws are wood. Remember this for the reverence of him that died unrued. And to the laws of the church abide every man, and ye shall be partners of Christ's precious blood, and blessed of God, as was the publican. Thus, if ye will be steadfast and true, Jesus will then with his grace you renew. To that Lord's bliss ye shall come all a, qui vivat per infinita saeculorum saecula. Amen.
And
Amen.
thus ends the interlude. I have to say, I don't know if anyone else, the very nicely, the repent was very nicely. That was very nicely done. I think that's very very on point. So before we get to that long, so I want to just go back to Actio and Eugenio as they entered, because it seems like they had one hell of a night. Do you get the impression we missed something here? What was happening with this gay Gigor, that wench that did your neck claw? I mean, were they in the same house as evil Counsel and Idleness? Have we missed a whole encounter between them? It feels like something like that is there. So yeah, there's looks like they maybe have a hangover. And are regretting the night before. Is that the reason why they go and to a virtuous sermon? I'm just speculating here. I don't know. Rachael.
I think it's like Actio got Eugenio to do one of his things, and so Eugenio was like, "Okay, I tried your thing. Now come try mine. Try the life that I was telling you about before," and that's why they're going to this.
I like that as motivation. I think that works really well. Yeah. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, Actio and Eugenio seem to be friends in a way that Eugenio and Irisdision are not, and it's curious because they're friends who. They want to hear a sermon. They don't want to be around evil Counsel. They know he's a bad one, so they actually get out of the way, which is, to my mind, unique in morality plays. Normally, they rush straight off to the nearest temptation and succumb to it. So I don't know. They seem sort of credibly the sort of guys that, I don't know, they've got up to something awful, but it was off stage, not on stage, so it doesn't seem as serious. Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, this is one of the least convincing repentances I can think of.
Oh, I don't know. That speech was quite convincing to make people spontaneoutly repent. We sometimes had spontaneous repentances where the speech just didn't have enough weight to it, and I think that one was quite a good one. It is a bit spontaneous randomness. I don't know if you persuaded them via what you were actually saying or just pure rhetorical flourishes towards the end.
Well, it didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, the Pharisee and the publican, it's all about hypocrisy versus humility, and they haven't been hypocritical at all.
Rachael.
I think this is one of those things where it's like, because Actio from the way they describe him, he seems to have some high like social position, and I think it's one of those things where they, like how in the End Town plays the other day, it's like like an intellectual, or social highness versus like a moral highness, and maybe the repentance part on Actio's part is supposed to be like, he occupies this high social position, so he should have a higher moral position, and maybe that's why he gives it up easily, I guess, like the repentance part. I don't know. I see this in like these plays that they seem to have like that intellectuals who don't live up, I don't know, that it's this moral argument, I guess, that they're having.
Other thoughts specifically about this closing before we go into more general thoughts and more general questions about what does one do with a play like John the Evangelist, and if we does anyone have any additional thoughts they want to throw in before I go into that sort of closing spiel? No, okay. So if we say that this is is this a text that you feel we could do something with as it stands? Or is this a challenge to say, look, maybe there are gaps, maybe we hand this to a writer to come up with other things? What could we do with this in performance, either live or on other mediums? Obviously, there's a lot of really nice material. I think there's some really nice set-piece scenes that could definitely be inserted into shows about vice or morality or whatever theme that might, or cuckoldry. I think we've definitely got elements for a cuckolding show in here. I like a bit of cuckolding on stage.
I was wondering how that sentence was going to end.
That was starting to write a check I couldn't cash. Lois.
Yeah. Well, this does look like something that could go into a mashup, which I think is what you're thinking of, a sort of, the quintessential morality play to end all morality plays, where we just put the best bits in of quite a lot of them, because it's a standard plot of a morality play. Certainly, there's a lot of sinners at the beginning, and then they all repent at the end. But most of what happens is otherwise is pretty nonsensical. I mean, you can get much better sermons from, I don't know, as I recall, Mankind is a much better treatment of this whole thing, and at much greater length, and Youth and Hick's Scorner. There are just so many of them, but it would be quite fun to do one that's just kind of the all-purpose central figure and his friend, and then the all-purpose vice and so on.
Because I'm just wondering that that there is an improvisatory possibility to this. So we've got a series of relationships that we sort of understand as a journey of the plot that sort of makes sense. That maybe we could build more around this that might work quite nicely. I mean, it's nice. It's not a big cast, so it's not like we're talking about a massive financial investment. I have other thoughts about what you might do with this text, but I want to see what the rest of the room. Liza, do you have any thoughts about if you wanted to do this play?
Well, if someone handed me this play, say someone with a theater hires me and says, you can have a job, but you have to direct this.
One day it could be you.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that it could, there are parts of it that could be fun. You'd want a resolution for idleness and evil counsel. You get a sense that you'd have to stage a sort of dance or physical stuff with music. You'd have to stage a showdown with John before the last sermon. And then maybe at the last sermon they would repent, or there've been enough hanging jokes in this play. Maybe they both get hanged. Maybe that's the sort of dance or physical action with music bit. It's not in and of itself unstageable, but given that this text, maybe it has been altered from an earlier version, and I would have to alter it further just so that some of the longer speeches have more of a through line and make sense. But, I would have to consult a theologian about some of that.
Yes, theologian on speed dial.
Or just on speed.
Yeah. David, any final thoughts from you generally about this play, this text? What could be done with it?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it is stageable, and I kind of think that you can stage it with 3 actors, and that I don't know. I kind of think that maybe Irisdision is kind of the earthly counterpart of St. John, or so he could almost step out of his sermon position to meet Eugenio sort of on the lower stage, maybe. I feel it. I mean, it is an odd play, and in many ways linguistically it doesn't fit together. But I feel it does have a kind of satisfying structure to it, nevertheless. I think if Liza could direct it, I'm sure it'd be great.
Oh, that's very kind.
Yeah. Rachael, any final thoughts from you about what could be done, or would you do?
I don't know. I think if you wanted to, you could make it like you could make it just like just like a street, and there's like a pub, and he's basically outside, talking like outside the pub, giving his sermon, and there's evil Counsel and them going in and out of the pub. They meet on the road, because I really think that this is sort of like a sort of, you could modernize it, and St. John could just be dressed looking, like he doesn't have a home, like he's one of those people with the signs.
Well, the end of the world is nigh.
Yeah, I think like it could have that place and the talk with the hanging and all that. It could be I don't know. I think you could. I think that there's things that sound disjointed, and I don't know. I'd look at this play again, because I still feel like there's things I'm missing, and that I'm not able to articulate everything that I think about this play. It's very interesting linguistically, and in the parts that it's not articulating are interesting too, I guess.
Greg, any final thoughts from you?
Loved it. I've got visions of I really want to explore more what the heck I was saying some of the time. I'd also feel like I'd want to have, if we were doing this on Zoom, backdrops with photographs of said places, just to kind of, with me sort of superimposed on sticking my thumb up or looking lecherously at some lady. Yeah, that wouldn't happen, but yes.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. Something superimposed, so it's very fake, but very real at the same time.
Eric, any final thoughts from you?
Well, no, I'm kidding. I was just gonna say, if I kind of if I was gonna direct this, I would just take out like everything else and just use like the evil Counsel and like Idleness bit, because it's hilarious. But I mean, without context, it's even more hilarious. Yeah. But I think it's interesting because it changes tone like halfway through, and it keeps changing tone like some sort of chameleon thing. There's a part of me going, is it just like sort of maybe like excerpts of plays, or like sort of sermon play, and then like, well, we need to stick this together so like it can be made into like play, or even sort of something like, what's it called, like I don't know, like we were talking a few weeks ago about how like when a schoolmaster writes a play, it's for the boys he teaches. Perhaps this is like the equivalent, but like for a priest and his congregation kind of thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's that question is it that there's stuff missing, or is there the stuff that this is from different sources, and there's some cobbling together has occurred? All sorts of questions about how it came to be. Lois.
Yeah, I noticed that right near the end of John's final sermon, he says that everybody should be obeying the teachings of the church, which suggests to me that this is originally at least a Catholic play. And if it was reprinted in the 50s, it's probably because Mary is on the throne. And there might have been a lot of problems with it because of that. I mean, especially if it got adapted back and forth for, people of different beliefs. I mean, someone might have tried to do it, as a Protestant play, which would have meant cutting a certain amount, and maybe then they stuck John's speeches back in to make sure that it didn't seem too much like a Protestant morality. I don't know. I mean, clearly something funny has happened to it. I can't imagine anybody writing it like this.
Mm. Yes, it doesn't feel like a work that's been written to come out like this at all. Any final thoughts from anyone that they want to throw in? Rachael, did you want to say final?
I mean, if it's that it came up during her thing, then maybe it has to do with the whole divorcing and being able to have so many wives thing that this is arguing against, to go, you know what I mean, that it's against some sort of moral order that they thought existed before.
I have to say I've thought about this play quite a lot over the last couple of years, about what could be done with it, and I mean, there's part of me that actually wants to embrace its sort of brokenness and almost to go for something that's closer to an art installation. Is that John is there in place throughout, but only speaks when the light comes on. And the people are allowed to mill around him. There's a sort of slice of life quality to this, that Eugenio and other people are just wandering by, and then they vaguely overhear him talking, and then they get interested, and then their life continues, and some other people come on. I kind of want to just add other random people coming on something that's actually slightly more expansive, and thinking about it as an audio thing as well, that sort of sense that maybe we're just catching snatches of St. John, that actually that we can embrace the fact that St. John's sermons don't always completely have a through line, and that the advantage with the podcast, as opposed to say broadcast radio, is we can present something that people can just sort of take as they go, and they don't have to. Nobody has to worry about whether someone listens in and can follow where it's going. We can prep people to say this. We're just playing around with the words and the form of this, and we can embrace the fact that maybe this text is broken, but maybe that's interesting. Lois.
Yeah, you know what? It's making me think of the Carmina Burana. Does anybody else know that? I mean, it's a series of songs based on these sort of Goliardic Latin poems of the Middle Ages, and it's sort of like that. I mean, it's a mixture of things. Some of them are much more solemn than others, and some are fun. It seems to me that what you're talking about almost asks for music, a variety of different styles. And then it doesn't matter if you can't really make a plot out of it, because they're kind of linked by a kind of musical logic.
Because the text is sort of slightly trapped between, it has a plot, but it doesn't quite have enough plot, or the plot isn't quite, there is some there. It's just not quite a satisfyingly tied up thing. Sorry, Liza, you were going to say something.
I wasn't really. I was just going to say, using the Carmina Burana, at least using the texts and maybe setting them to tunes from the period, because I don't know if any of the actual notation that the texts were found with has survived, but there are certainly some arrangements or some usual medieval tunes that are used with those texts, and that could be like a fun way in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's short. It doesn't require many actors, and therefore it is one of those things that I find most delightful. It's potentially very cheap, and therefore it becomes a very, very targetable text to produce, and therefore it is, and also its damagedness. Just I feel like it's a poor lost little little animal that needs coaxing and helping back to health. Even if I don't fully expect that it's going to be coming to the West End anytime soon. Let's keep our expectations to a reasonable level. Unless anyone has any additional thoughts they're dying to throw in, I'm going to close this session, thanking everyone in the room for giving this text a little bit of air to breathe, and farewell.
Well.